Bit of a different start for us this morning, going straight to the state member for Barwon in the New South Wales Parliament, Roy Butler. Good morning.
Morning, Rod. How are you?
Good. There's been a lot of concern about the people of the Walgett Shire and supplies getting into that town and them being looked after. And you have an update for us on how things are going.
Yeah, look, we've been acutely aware that towns like Lightning Ridge, Walgett, Collarenebri, and there's a number of other towns that have access issues like Canamble, Burke, and as the floodwaters move south, it's not in your listening area, but Condoblin's about to cop it as well. The update, I suppose, the most important one is around fuel, because Lightning Ridge was out of fuel. They were maintaining 1,500 litres of diesel, which was just for emergency services vehicles. And as your listeners know, a lot of people around the ridge use generators, and they have diesel-powered equipment. So there'd been a fair bit of buying of fuel, which had drained the tanks pretty quickly, and we couldn't get a new tanker in. So as I'm advised that as of yesterday, there was a tanker that made it through, so that will be able to resupply fuel into Lightning Ridge. The issues that were raised with us were around access to food, food being flown in, medications, and even newspapers. I know newspapers doesn't seem like an essential thing, but if people want to know what's going on, getting the paper through is important. And frankly, we don't want another business going broke because they can't get their product out. So all of that, I think, has largely been resolved. We've been able to make sure that essentials are getting in, and newspapers and medications are getting into these communities. The most important thing, Rod, is that if people are experiencing a problem with supply of food or other essentials, they really need to log that with SES on the 132500 number. And I know that people have had mixed experiences with that, but the most important thing is that it's logged with them, so that it's an officially recognised request for assistance. And certainly if you do that and you're not getting any joy, then by all means give us a call, and we're happy to go direct through some back channels to the SES and let them know that's not happening. But getting it logged there is really important. So that's the immediate stuff. That's the stuff that's right in front of our face at the moment, which is the access, roads being closed, getting goods and services into communities. That's what's in front of us right now. The bigger picture is, what do we do next? And when this water recedes, we're going to have a massive amount of damage to our roads and public infrastructure. And I put a question to the Premier yesterday about that. It's actually just gone up on social media, asking, understand we need to wait for the water to recede, but we can't be back in this situation where, people don't have medication, or, we can't even get bread into a community. We can't be back in that situation. And this isn't any kind of criticism of our volunteers with the SES or other emergency services. They're all doing a great job. They're doing the best they can. This is about our public infrastructure and our roads and their capacity to cope with flooding. So the Premier has given me an answer essentially saying that we won't just repair roads. We won't just be repairing roads back to the state they're in. We will be improving roads. We'll be making them better and making them more resistant to flood, which is what I really wanted to hear, and I suppose a lot of our communities would want to hear, because we don't want to see us back in a situation where our communities are cut off and they can't access the things they need.
And do you think that there is the money for this? Because, as you mentioned, there's a big lot of roads that are damaged.
Look, and I was talking to the Minister for Regional Roads this morning about this. His problem's bigger than mine. I've got a very large electorate, 44% of the state. He's got the whole state. And roads are damaged across the whole state. There's no LGA or even the unincorporated area that's been left untouched. So this is a statewide problem, and it's going to take partnership between the state, federal and local government to be able to resolve. And again, that's something I've been talking to the Premier and to the Emergency Services Minister about over the last, especially the last couple of weeks. I got 40 minutes on a plane with the Premier on Friday of last week, and that gave me the opportunity to really sort of stress to him how important the issue of roads were, and the not just getting them back open so people have access to towns for medical appointments, for school, for shopping, but also how do we make sure we're not back in this situation again? It's going to happen again, just like drought happens, floods happen, and people talk about 20-year cycles. Well, I don't think we had to wait 20 years for floods. I think we had a fair bit of water in 2016, and now here we are again. So getting our public infrastructure to a standard that it can maintain access for our communities, I think, needs to be a priority for this government and the next government, whoever forms government in 2023, it needs to be a priority to make sure our regional communities are not cut off and not left in this situation again.
Yeah, the roads should be built above the flood levees if that's possible. The Kemmelore Highway has been closed for a month now from Bourke through to Walgett and beyond into Moree. There's also the Mitchell Highway from Bourke down to Dubbo. It's in a awful state. The potholes are big enough to take my little car and not be seen. It might be an exaggeration, but still, they're huge potholes and so many of them. And it needs to be a real, single carriageway. Not when you're travelling in one laneway and you've got a big semi-trailer coming in the other way and you're trying to miss out on a pothole. It's very dangerous.
Oh, I think we've all been in that situation, Rod, where, it's not just potholes. Like, potholes are one thing, and I think all of us have probably experienced damage to our vehicles from potholes, which is extremely frustrating and costs us money and takes time out of our day to go and repair. It's not just potholes, though. There's whole sections of road that are washed away. So you're driving along and all of a sudden the sealed surface disappears and you're on gravel because that whole section of road is washed away. And this is where, just patching that is not going to do it. Just patching it's not going to fix the problem. So we need to have a far bigger focus on building roads that are going to cope with water, cope with water height, but also not fall apart. When we get a rain event like this. So our supply chains have been cut to some of these communities. Our normal supply chains have been cut for weeks, and that causes a huge amount of distress for people. Like, businesses haven't been able to trade. We've spoken to the Premier as well about business assistance. I suspect there's a package imminent. There's a package coming to assist small businesses. I apologise, that's the bells telling me I need to be somewhere, but that's all right. I don't need to be there yet. So we need to get that assistance online, and that needs to be quick, and that needs to be based on the number of employees that people have got, where they're not getting the trade and they're unable to have the tourist trade. Like, that's for communities like Lightning Ridge. Probably no one really wants to see a caravan at the moment, except those small businesses that would rely on the income they get from them, and they can't get through, which means tourism across the electorate at the moment is pretty much on hold, except for those communities that are still accessible. I was in Broken Hill on the weekend, and they've still got tourism going on, which is great because people can come through from Adelaide, and the Barrier Highway is still accessible. But it's a massive economic impact on our communities to have this situation going on with supply chains cut and access cut. But it's also going to be a major project for state, federal and local governments to be able to put these roads back together, but put them back together better than they were, so that we're not back in this situation.
Just one more question, and it's swinging back by the Walgett Shire Council area. A number of the little villages have been evacuated. One's got an evacuation order for 4 o'clock this afternoon. Is the evacuation system being run properly?
Look, I'd have to defer to the SES on that. So I think that the SES have a fairly conservative approach, which is good, because what we don't want to have happen is a community inundated without warning. So I think they're looking at the river heights, they're looking at the projected flows at different points on the river, and they're saying, well, the risk is that this could be at a certain height, which would inundate homes, so we're going to tell people to move earlier rather than later. And look, frankly, I think that's probably a smart way to do it. We wouldn't want to be trying to evacuate people in the middle of a flood when the homes are inundated. So giving people advance notice gives them the opportunity to get their belongings up high, and the SES are assisting with that in different communities. They'll come in and give you a hand, get your belongings up high, and get yourself to safety. And I think that's, as I said, that's probably a good approach. We wouldn't want to be trying to conduct an evacuation while floodwaters are ripping through a community. So there's going to be a major tail to the clean-up for this, Rod. Like, we've got a lot of communities have been affected across the whole electorate, a lot of roads have been affected, a lot of public infrastructure that's been affected. So this is going to be with us for some time. But I'd really encourage people, if they need help or if they're unsure of what's going on, follow their local SES page, give them a call on that 132 500 number. And as I said, more than happy to hear from people if they've called that number and haven't had any sort of joy in getting what they need. My office can certainly give them assistance.
Member for Barwon, Roy Butler, I thank you for your time.
No problems, Rod. Thank you.
That was Roy Butler, Outback Mornings, Outback Radio, 2WEB.